Well, hello, folks. I just finished taking a ride around, and it's a beautiful, seems like summer day. It's already 18 degrees around 11, a little bit after 11 a.m. So happy about the weather. It's going to get hot. I just have to remember to drink more fluids when I'm riding around. It's deceptively dehydrating. I'm on a big kick now delving into Christian Zionism and Zionism in general as a way to understand what's going on in Israel now, in Gaza and the West Bank and so on, around the world with the protests and everything. So rather than just, watch some news outlets and read the usual propaganda, I tend to look into things a little bit more deeply. I just feel compelled to do so. Zionism keeps coming up. And I read that book, like I said before, Short History of Christian Zionism from the Reformation till today. And it was a fascinating read, as I said before, so I thought I'd go in and just kind of have a look, because I haven't read that many books about Zionism. I read one a while ago, years ago, I think, the last time there was a big problem in Gaza. When was that? 2016, 15? I don't remember. Anyway, I read a book by an Israeli and another book by a Palestinian Christian and both of these books talked about Zionism a little bit and the importance of Zionism to events happening over there at the time and before, regional issues and conflicts that have been happening for some time. While I was doing my research about this Zionism, it's very interesting because it sheds so much light on politics in the United States and geopolitics. It's very complex. I hate having to use that word all the time, but it just is, because it impacts politics, it impacts economics, it impacts energy wars. I was just wondering, how politically powerful is the Israeli lobby, and how much is that power coming from religious organizations, and in particular Zionist groups or groups identifying as vaguely Zionist? And what impact does that have on politics and geopolitics coming from the United States? Yeah, you can be Zionist and still be a Catholic like Joe Biden, in the sense that Israel's important to you and you think it has to exist and you're going to defend it, almost like it's a 51st state of the United States, or it's like a territory of the U.S. It must be defended by us. And it is propped up and defended in many ways. And the economies are very linked. Also, the military-industrial economy, as well as technology. There's an estimate of the number of Zionists. So it's difficult to come up with an exact number, and it depends on how they identify. And there's so many groups. But basically, so the American Jewish population is approximately 7.5 million, according to recent estimates. And support for Israel among Jewish Americans, well, a 2020 Pew Research study found that about 82% of Jewish Americans feel that caring about Israel is an important or essential part of what being Jewish means to them. So, identity. And this has to do with national identity as well. And that's interesting because that bleeds across into the global South as well. Chinese evangelical groups and charismatic groups that identify with Israel as a state for religious reasons, as well as African and other places like that. But later on, I'll add to that in another video. So evangelical Christians are a huge group in the U.S. They're very influential. They're very influential in politics. There's many evangelicals in Congress. Mike Pence was a evangelical Zionist, Vice President Mike Pence. So the center estimates that there are about 70 million evangelical Christians in the United States. So 333 million people in the U.S. And 70 million evangelical Christians in the U.S. And I'm guessing that these are adults. Because I don't know if they take into consideration the children of people, adults who claim to be evangelical Christians. But anyway, 70 million, that's a lot out of a 330 million. So among the evangelical Christians, support for Israel is very high. A 2017 Lifeway research survey found that 67% of evangelicals believe that Christians should support the Jewish people's right to the land of Israel. So this is very specific, right? To the land of Israel. And obviously they have reasons, from interpreting the Bible, the Old and New Testaments, as to why that's important. And that falls under the broader umbrella of Zionism. So estimating that, so if we assume that 60 to 70% of Jewish Americans identify with some form of Zionism, a conservative estimate given the high level of support for Israel, this would be roughly 4.5 to 5.25 million people. Christian Zionists, if we take the Lifeway research finding that 67% of evangelicals support Israel and consider this as an identification with Christian Zionism, we have approximately 47 million evangelical Christian Zionists. 47 million. That's a lot. So you put these two together, and the total in the United States would be around 51.5 to 52.25 million. So obviously this is a general approximation, not a hard number, but still, you can imagine that that's a very high number. So there's a lot of people in the U.S. that affiliate with or identify with the Jewish state and Zionism. Zionism's extremely complex. As I said in my last video, there are Zionisms as opposed to just Zionism. There are many forms of it coming from the charismatic side, Pentecostal, as well as more mainstream Church of England type things, or the evangelical side, prosperity gospel, and so on and so forth, all over the world. And you can imagine the economic clout that they have. I mean, the lobby must be extremely wealthy. There are estimates of how much money is raised for Israel every year for various purposes, for the IDF, for soldiers there, for help with elderly and, institutions, education, as well as obviously military equipment and so on. So later on I'll do a video and I'll talk about the major branches of Christianity and so on, and how this plays out in the Christian Zionist thing. So this isn't to say that I think that Christian Zionism explains the Middle East or the Israel project as formed in the 19th century, even going back as far as the ideas in the 18th century, but the 19th, 20th, 21st century. And it's not the only thing. Obviously, there are more important geopolitical issues, whether you're talking First World War era, Second World War era, or between Second World War and now. And obviously in terms of energy and material resources. And it's a big deal. It's the Great Game 2.0. I always refer to the Great Game because it is a great game. And the idea for a lot of the players, whether they're wealthy churchgoers or donors at church or billionaires or leaders in government, other bureaucrats and so on, NGO types, think tank types, ideologues, fanatics, whatever. People tend to believe that, our side is right, their side is wrong, and They have this zero-sum kind of us against them thing. And Satan comes into the picture and all kinds of other rationalizations and justifications for the need for one side to conquer all, or at least to control everything. And for a long time, obviously, the United States has controlled the energy markets through its alliances as well as through the dollar hegemon. And its military might as a naval power, and as just an overall military power that's absolutely not shy about flexing its muscle and printing lots and lots of money to support hundreds and hundreds of bases around the world, to control trade and control the flow of energy and so on. So if that's threatened, if that's coming to an end for some odd reason, and you look at the players really don't want to lose this game, and giving up control means they lose. So what are they willing to do to try to keep control? Are they willing to have a nuclear war? Are they willing to continue to have proxy wars and instability around the world? It's mind-boggling. I think that the priorities are all messed up. That's my opinion. I just think that it'd be better if we cooperated with one another around the world and tried to make things better for everybody. But that, to many people, that sounds socialist, and socialism is satanic and evil and doesn't work. And you go back to the capitalist realism thing where you can better imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism type thing. We live in a world that needs to grow, and we think growth is tied to GDP and to consumerism. I think growth could be expanded to better things having to do with human welfare and human flourishing and growth and human potential. But there you go. What kind of a weirdo am I? And universal human rights and whatnot. It's funny, in these religions there's so much conflict or tension between religious groups that are more universalist, ecumenical, and so on, and groups that are more dogmatic, more exceptionalist. And I'll go into that in a further video, because I think this Zionism thing is incredibly interesting, especially since we're living in 2024, surrounded by technology, artificial intelligence, amazingly powerful communications technology, blockchains, all this kind of stuff. And the US seems to have airplane accidents all the time, or problems, and it's just getting hammered by tornadoes all the time. And some Pentecostals or charismatics would think that, this is God's wrath. We can pray and change the weather. We can pray and heal a pandemic. We can see the future. God will reveal his plan, and so on and so forth. Other people are like, no, it doesn't work that way. We can't understand God's plan. Things are going to happen, and whatever happens, happens because it's God's plan, and we'll just have to wait and find out. So in the world, we have to do what we got to do to survive and make things nice for ourselves. So we have a world where there's secularism is big, and science is big, and some people call it scientism, but also religion is not going anywhere. And the people discussing these various perspectives on their faith are incredibly smart and committed people. And they've thought things through very carefully. And they have a lot of power in the world. They really do. And, it's not culty. It's not like some extremist cult. I don't even think that Unification Church is that culty anymore when you look at things. And it's a huge number of people around the world. And of course, I'm not talking about Muslims. I'm not talking about Sikhs or Jains or Buddhists or Hindus or all the other major religions and so on. And they all have factions. and divisions and tension and so on. So this is interesting. I'm going to pursue this for a bit because I'm interested in it, so I'll share that with you. And thanks for listening. Have a great day or evening or what week or weekend. William T. out.